Hey, welcome! Today, we're going to talk about something that's super easy to forget about, but it's absolutely critical for your vehicle. I'm talking about the fuel filter. It's this tiny little part that does a massive job, and trust me, ignoring it can lead to some seriously expensive headaches. So yeah, let's dive right in.
All right, so let's start with a quick gut check. Does any of this sound familiar? You hop in your car, you turn the key, and the engine just cranks and cranks before it finally decides to start? Or maybe you're trying to merge onto the highway. You hit the gas and the car just stumbles or hesitates, It's not just your car being moody. These are often the first signs your engine is trying to tell you something's wrong.
And honestly, that's just the tip of the iceberg. These classic warning signs, they really start to paint a picture. You might notice the engine just feels rough, shaky when you're stopped at a red light. Or maybe you hear this weird, high-pitched whining sound coming from the back of the car. And then, of course, the big one, the dreaded check engine light pops on. You might even get codes like P0171 or P0174, which are basically your car's computer screaming, "Hey, I'm starving for fuel over here."
So what exactly is this little part that can cause so much chaos? Let's get into what it actually does, because it's a pretty cool job.
Okay, the best way to think about your fuel filter is like a personal bodyguard for your engine. Seriously, its one and only job is to be the gatekeeper. It stands right between your fuel tank and your super sensitive, highly engineered engine. And it's there to catch all the nasty stuff. I'm talking tiny bits of rust, dirt, gunk, you name it, making sure only pure, clean fuel gets where it needs to go.
Now here's where it gets really interesting, especially if you drive a diesel. For both gas and diesel, you're filtering out dirt, right? But for diesel engines, the stakes are way, way higher. We're talking about fuel systems that operate at insane pressures, sometimes up to 30,000 psi. At that pressure, a single microscopic speck of dirt can cause a catastrophic failure. And on top of that, diesel filters have two extra, super important jobs. They have to separate water out of the fuel, and they have to prevent what's called the diesel bug, basically nasty microbial gunk from growing in your tank.
And look, this isn't just some what-if scenario. There's this story from the source material that just hits it home perfectly. It's about a fleet manager who decided to, skip the fuel filter maintenance to save a few bucks. Well, within 6 months, 3 of his trucks went down with injector failures. The cost? Over $1,500 each. Just a really painful, really expensive lesson that a simple, cheap part could have easily prevented. Yeah, that story just perfectly sets up the financial side of things. Let's really break down the numbers here, because this is where you can see how fast a tiny, forgotten part turns into a massive problem for your bank account.
All right, here's the most important number to remember. The solution, the part that prevents all this chaos we're talking about, it costs, on average, about $30. Just let that sink in. $30.
Okay, now here's the cost of doing nothing. When that $30 filter gets clogged, your fuel pump has to work way, way harder to shove fuel through it. And over time, all that strain makes the pump overheat and just burn out. The replacement cost for that? You're looking at $850 minimum, often more. And I mean, when you see it laid out like this, the difference is it's staggering. It's not even close. On one side, you have this tiny little bar for proactive maintenance. On the other, this towering skyscraper of a repair bill. Whether it's the fuel pump or those $1,500 injectors we talked about, the financial gap is just enormous. It is literally the clearest example of an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure you will ever find in car maintenance.
And the damage doesn't even stop there. It's a total domino effect. First, the filter clogs up, which puts a huge strain on the fuel pump. Then, some of that gunk might get forced past the clogged filter and straight into your fuel injectors, which, by the way, have openings smaller than a human red blood cell, so they get wrecked. Then, your engine starts running lean, which can cause serious long-term damage. Your gas mileage goes down the toilet, and the worst-case scenario, the engine just stalls out completely. Imagine that happening in the middle of a busy intersection. It's not just expensive, it's dangerous.
Okay, so that's the problem, right? It's pretty serious. But the good news, the really good news, is that the solution is super straightforward. So let's shift gears and talk about your action plan, how you can actually take control of this.
Step 1. The very first thing you should do is also the easiest. Just check your owner's manual. Seriously, there's no one-size-fits-all rule here. Some cars need a new filter every 20,000 miles. Others have these so-called lifetime filters that can go 150,000 miles or even more. Your manual is the ultimate source of truth for your specific car. Start there.
All right, the big question, can you do this yourself? And the answer is, maybe. It really depends. If your filter is easy to get to, like on the frame rail under the car, it can be a fantastic DIY job. You'll save money on labor, and it'll take you maybe an hour or two. But if your filter is buried inside the fuel tank, oh man, the difficulty level just skyrockets. In that case, a pro can get it done safely, they have all the special tools, and it's just way less of a headache.
Now, if you do decide to give it a shot, the basic steps are pretty clear, but you've got to be careful. The absolute most critical step is number 1, you have to relieve the fuel system pressure before you disconnect a single line. Fuel systems are under pressure, and you don't want gasoline spraying everywhere. And then, when you put the new filter in, look for a little arrow on the side of it. That arrow has to point in the direction the fuel is flowing. Get that backwards, and you're going to have a bad time.
So really, it all comes down to this. We end up right back where we started, with a pretty simple question. Is the $30 part worth risking the health of your entire engine and a potential $1,500 repair bill? When you put it like that, the answer is pretty obvious, isn't it? This tiny, unsung hero is a very, very big deal.